of the 2023 NBA draft, the Portland Trail Blazers selected the point guard out of the G League Ignite, Scoot Henderson. Locked On's NBA draft coverage is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba, and they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. You won't want to take your Birddogs off, we promise you. Let's bring in our host of Locked On Blazers, Mike Richman. Looking at the player who'll have the good fortune possibly of learning from Damian Lillard, what was your thought about the Blazers selecting Scoot?
Yeah, well, more on that in a moment. I think this is unequivocally a good thing for the Blazers. In my mind, Scoot Henderson was the second best prospect in the draft. Picking the second best prospect in the draft at 3 is, that's what you hope for, right? You hope you get a little luck, hope things break your way. By people who are smarter than me at this draft stuff, think he has all NBA potential, maybe even during his rookie contract, and he's going to be really, really stinking good. It's a little more complicated than that, though, for the Blazers, because it isn't just plug and play. They are not your typical team drafting third. So by getting Scoot, I think more complications have happened.
I would agree with you on that. And it's interesting that you say that, because my first thought was, so this gets interesting in Portland because, okay, Johnson Billups, how are you going to utilize Scoot with Dame and with Anthony Simons? How do you see him being able to work in the rookie?
Well, I don't think they can go into training camp with all 3 of those gentlemen you just mentioned on the roster. Yeah. I do not think you can go into camp in the fall with Scoot Henderson, with Anthony Simons, with Damian Lillard, with Shaedon Sharpe. There just aren't enough minutes. Sharpe is probably projects as maybe a 3 down the road, but he's probably a 2 now. There's just guard minutes that he's going to have to play, or they're going to go a little bit small, which they've done a bunch. As we're recording this, no trades have happened. They have not they have not reshaped the roster. So if those things happen after we've recorded this, after we hit stop, then maybe it will be. But this seems to, it always seems like the Blazers were going to have to choose a direction. And if this is them choosing a direction during this draft, it seems like this could be a big shift. It doesn't necessarily mean that Damian Lillard's out the door. I don't mean to imply that. But it certainly keeps that option on the table. And it means that, to me, something's got to give with Anthony Simons or Damian Lillard before they get this thing going in the fall.
I would have to agree with you on that, because when I saw that, my first thought was, okay, if you recall, Mike, the last week, 2 or 3, the Blazers have kind of been in that space with the Wizards, if you will, where they're one of those teams, and some might even throw the Utah Jazz in there as well, as saying kind of fire sale-ish. I'm not going to say complete and total fire sale, but there has been commentary and conversation around possibly the final departure of a Damian Lillard. I know he's been linked to the Heat as an example. So yeah, that was one of the first thoughts I had when I saw this pick of Scoot Henderson. But I agree with you. If he's there at 3, you'd be remiss to pick him, because honestly, you're talking about Wembanyama, you're talking about Miller, you're talking about Henderson, and then you're talking about the rest of the draft class. Let's just be real. So yeah, you don't pass up a guy like that, but it definitely makes you kind of raise a hair, or kind of raise an eyeball, an eyelash, something. It was just kind of like, whoa, oh, well, okay. So yeah, it's interesting there. But when you kind of look at his skill set, if you will, and kind of what he brings to the table, you're right in that as well, Mike, that he is one of the players, if not the player, who comes to the league NBA ready by virtue of him being with G League Ignite. And this is a team that's in need of the type of guy, even in the backcourt, who could still bring on some level that rim protection and that defensive versatility. Even for a guy at 6'2", you're still kind of looking for him to be that two-way player. So how does Scoot maybe bring that to the table, or provide maybe that kind of help for the Blazers backcourt?
Yeah, in theory, I think he can play with Damian Lillard pretty well. He's an on-ball guy. He's maybe not a great spot-up shooter, off-ball guy, which is, if you're going to play next to Dame, you kind of need to be able to have some skills to play off the ball. But he's a really good athlete, a really good downhill player. He's got the wingspan to be a special defender. Most rookies are bad on defense, so I think year one, it's maybe too high of an expectation to say this is going to be really impactful. And the Blazers were awful on defense the last couple of years. That Scoot at 6'2" is going to be the guy that changes that. But at some point in the future, he is like a two-way impactful guard that could be that player. I think at some point the Blazers were talent poor enough. They were lacking like true impactful players enough that if Scoot's there for you, you take Scoot and figure it out later. They did step one. They took Scoot. We have now reached the point, Tenitra, where it's like, okay, let's figure it out later. And so later is what's next. But for now, it's like, I think you got a really good player. I think you got a really good player that could help, and a really good player could probably help very early in his career. It's the how that is the next question the Blazers will have to answer.
Yeah, that'll be interesting as well. And, like you said, you're looking at the board and you're kind of watching to see, because the NBA is interesting relative to other drafts, right? Where it's really kind of looking at 1 through 3, maybe sometimes 1 through 5. And then there's that next crop. And then there's kind of like the bottom of the draft board. And we're kind of on the bottom side of the draft board. Now, the Blazers still have some draft capital, right? And so they may be able to do some things if they so choose, or that may be something that's appealing to some other teams. Kind of where do you think they're going to go with the rest of their capital?
Well, they got 23. As we're recording this, they have not selected at 23.
Right.
And remember,
they have, like you said, emphasis on as we record.
Yeah. So we're in the middle, in media race here. But they have 43 as well. I don't think they can go into next year with 3 more rookies on the roster, unless they're going young and launching a rebuild. If they're trying to be good and being competitive, they got to trade something, and they just need size up front. So whether they go with somebody like a Noah Clowney at 23 and add some size and say, okay, this young player is going to grow into what we need, it would probably make more sense to package something like Anthony Simons and 23 to find an upgrade in the front court. That is, of course, if you're planning on building around Damian Lillard. And that's the question mark hanging over everything here. If they finish this draft with 3 rookies and they don't make any trades, and I was promised trades in this draft, okay? I was promised trades. I was promised fireworks. Right? Limited fireworks so far. Yeah. We'll see. But if I would say the same. If they go with 3 rookies, it does seem to be an indicator of a direction that they might head. A lot of stuff can change. Free agency is a week away and all those things. And like, you can make trades down the line. You don't have to do it all tonight. But if they don't do something else, I'll be raising more than just a hair or an eyelash. I'll probably have both eyebrows raised. I got pretty expressive eyebrows. I'll probably have them both up there and say, oh, maybe this is the way they're heading, and they're showing us that now.
Indeed. So do you feel like you said, we're still kind of in limbo because you still got the backside of the first round and you still have the possibility of what they do in that second round, and then you've got free agency lurking. Bold prediction. Do you think that the Blazers are going to try to make a splash of some sort now, or it's kind of a bold prediction in that space, or do you feel like they're going to wait to kind of make a splash in free agency, or do you sense, and this, of course, is just kind of looking into your crystal ball, that maybe, just maybe, this indication of picking a Scoot Henderson may say, I don't want to say rebuild, Mike, but maybe says, hey, we're going to kind of rebuild.
I'm not afraid of that word. Okay. It would be a rebuild. Some people are. It would certainly be one of those. It's hard to say. They're not going to be players in free agency. They don't have cap space, so they're not going to make a splash there. It would happen on the trade market. The draft is typically the time that you can make those types of moves. It's not your biggest and boldest moves that would happen down the line. So my sort of bold prediction is, like, if they come away, like I said, if they come away with 3 rookies tonight, I think the writing is on the wall. If they're going to be aggressive and build this team out, and it doesn't happen this evening, I don't think they're going there. So my bold prediction is, I think I'll pop back on in this similar interview setting after they pick at 23, and then I'll have a much clearer sense of where they're headed.
Yeah, it should be interesting. And like you said, we'll use the term apron strings as it relates to the luxury tax and the new collective bargaining agreement that are dictating a lot of things that are being done by the Blazers and other teams around the association. So for more of the Blazers, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Blazers podcast wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for stopping by. Round 1. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having me.